and let me put your title up here. Rick Light is my guest today. This is the Free American Hour. He's with Well-Regulated American Militias. It's a website, and the links are up on my site. Rick, there have been attacks. Now, you went to a trial of Sergeant Richard Dyer, and you were at the trial.
Charles Dyer.
Charles Dyer.
Charles
Dyer. Yes, sir. Now, he was on YouTube doing pretty much exactly what I do on the YouTube and everything. I'm telling people there's a problem, that the government's out of control, the government's being run by the banksters, and the answer I came up with over 10 years ago was to start the militias and the Free American, because people had to be educated. People had to know what's going on.
That's correct, sir.
So, tell me about Well-Regulated American Militias. Why did you start it? And I did all of this after what happened at Waco. I mean, what happened at Waco shouldn't that's something you read about happening in communist China or Soviet Union.
Well, sir, it's real simple. We started seeing things like Ruby Ridge, Waco, just noticing a general degeneration of our rights in general. And in the 90s, it caused me to kind of shake off what I would call my normal life, and I started to educate myself on what I was seeing. And it all boiled down to the American people forgetting basically what the founders intended for them to do. Our founders fought a war with the English to create a United States, 13-colony United States. And they went through the trouble of drafting us a constitution. And they did something, they even took it a step further by enumerating God-given rights. They didn't give us those rights, Mr. Douglas. They enumerated them so we would recognize them, we would use them to remain as free people. As I educated myself along, I realized how important the Second Amendment was and what it really meant. I noticed that a lot of people thought that the Second Amendment was about their guns. And I learned that, well, that was only part of the equation. It actually astounded me that people would quote the Second Amendment as, well, the right to keep and bear arms, when there's much more to it. The Second Amendment is quite clear, and it's what it says and what it means as you read it. And I'm going to quote it for people. It says, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the rights of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Well, this perplexing puzzle that I noticed of people wanting to say, well, it was the right to keep and bear arms, I wanted to know more about what the first part of the Second Amendment said. So I started to study. And I realized as I studied that, well, it meant that we as citizens should maintain a well-regulated militia because it's necessary. And I want to emphasize the word necessary. Show me anywhere in the Constitution where something says it's necessary. So this right is necessary, that the militia is necessary to the security of our free states. And it's up to us as people, us as citizens, to maintain a well-regulated militia and for it to work within its communities to safeguard the freedoms, the liberties, the welfare, the prosperity, about everything you can think of within our community. And it doesn't mean to be arbitrary, by the way. A well-regulated militia isn't necessarily a war machine. It actually serves its community. It serves its sheriff. It serves the county commissioner, serves the judge, and it serves every member of its community by helping keep liberty and freedom intact. Now, we as a people are losing our constitutional way of life. And part of it is that we are to blame. We're losing the very concepts in which our founders had set this republic up. for us to remain in control of it.
You know, I just heard an echo from 200 and some odd years ago of a woman asking Benjamin Franklin, "What form of government have you wrought for us, Mr. Franklin?" And his answer was, "A constitutional republic, ma'am, if you could keep it."
Yes, and that's why it emphasized if you could keep it. If you go back and read what our founders put in there, they continuously warned us not to forget the basis on which the republic was formed and our duties as citizens to maintain that republic. It wasn't left up to elected officials. They warned us about elected officials. They knew elected officials could be a tyrant worse than a king. And, well, we're coming down, well, we have crossed that time to where our elected officials are losing their concept of constitutionality and think that, well, okay, if it feels good, let's just do it by law. Well, folks, this is where the militia comes in. Now, it isn't to be an arbitrary war machine that goes out threatening and disposing itself as some kind of what you would call off-the-wall gun and run or run and gun army. That's not what it's about. It's really about getting in there and working with your elected officials, as I said earlier, to maintain liberty, freedom, prosperity, and everything else in your community. It's to work with, not against things. Now, we have a trouble within our militia today. Our militia today is basically born out of anger. And righteously so. I wouldn't tell anybody that they're not righteous in their anger. But how do we proceed?
Well, you know, the problem that we have here, just let me interject this, the problem I've said that we have here is, how do we fight evil without becoming evil? If you want to go out and shoot all the blacks, all the Jews, all the Mexicans, all the Muslims, then you ain't a good person, you ain't a good guy, and you don't belong in the militia or in this country, I don't think.
No, sir, I agree with you. The militia has to defend every person's rights. They have to be able to defend their First Amendment right. They have to be able to defend the Second Amendment, the Third Amendment, Fourth Amendment, right on down the line. That's what the militia does. It serves its community. It protects its community, and it protects those rights under the Constitution.
As I sat and watched the incident at Waco from my boat in Miami, out fishing, deep sea fishing, loved dolphins, kept my freezer full of them, and I was just raging at the television. Where is the Texas Rangers? Where is the Sheriff's Department? Why are they letting them do this? This is not Red China. Why are they letting them do this? And the press wasn't helping. The press tried to justify for the government, where they tried to tell the government's position, and nobody did anything to help. I swore I would never sit back and watch something like that happen again without trying to do something. And that's why I went out and started organizing the militias in New Mexico. Now, the Southern Poverty Law and the ADL immediately came after me. Why a Jewish organization would do that, I had no idea at the time. But they told millions of people that Clay Douglas started the militia like that was a bad thing.
Well, actually, we got a Jewish entity out there that's pro for us.
That would be the Jews for Preservation of Firearms Ownership.
Very powerful entity out there. Matter of fact, WRAM runs one of their videos on the Second Amendment on our main page. Look, folks, the militia ain't about a color.
No.
It ain't about a political stance.
And that
it
Constitution,
isn't about religion.
That Constitution that you quoted, that Bill of Rights that you quoted, allows anybody out there to go out there and worship any way they please. If they want to bang their head against that Wailing Wall over there, they can knock themselves out. They want to stick their nose in the sand, their ass up in the air, and pray to Mecca, no problem. I'll try to keep St. Bernard off of them.
That's correct.
And if they want to get over in the corner and pray for a Cadillac, knock yourself out, just don't try to drag me down on my knees with you. I won't do that.
That's right. That's the neat thing about our country and having rights, and that seems to be lost. And sadly enough, I'm seeing in the patriot community themselves where, well, you're free if you believe it my way, but if you're not free if you don't, right? And that concept has to go away, folks. Look, the trick to freedom is simple. You're allowed to be free to do what you want to do. You're just not allowed to step on the person that's next to you. You've got to leave their freedom intact too.
Well,
and that's where our founders have the concept of learn to disagree, but still be respectful in your disagreements. Learn to disagree to disagree.
You know, it's interesting.
Learn to agree to disagree.
This is happening. This is happening with the whole, you know, with the whole patriot movement. It's like, wow, if you don't believe, right, the Christian movement too. If you don't believe our particular sect of Christianity and you want to go out there and dance, well, you're going to go to hell. Now, I ain't going for that. That's trying. And now the other problem.
Well, even by biblical beliefs, there's no human being on earth that's capable of judging somebody to what they call hell. The last time I read in the good book, it said that God had that job. That's God's job. So when somebody tells somebody else they're going to go to hell, shame on them.
You know what?
Just try to step into God's position, and you're going to judge another human being. In your opinion, they're going to go to hell. Well, I've got a big problem with that.
I do too. I do too. That's exactly the point I was making. You can worship any way you please. But, you know, God created man, and I think he did that because he was bored shitless. We provide his entertainment, we provide his romance, we provide the espionage, we provide all the things that entertains him. But when we...
That could very well be.
You know, I've also got other you know, beliefs that I'm working on. I believe in the 21st century, you know, burning bushes are passe, so God works on the internet. Now, I started the Free American because I wanted to give all of the patriots a voice, and I did that, and I've did that for years. And but the patriot movement, it's like it fragmented. Just the warfare, the strategy of our enemies. The goal is control, and the strategy is to divide and conquer. They want us fighting with each other. That's what they did to the Patriot Unity Coalition, and which is, by the way, is still up on my...
You betcha. You have your elements out there that are always going to be adverse, and they're going to cause distractions. It just didn't happen in the Patriot Unity Coalition. I don't want to get into this too far, but because I supported Charles Dyer and his family, along with some others. We had actually a support team that worked with Mrs. Dyer's family, and Mrs. Dyer called the shots. She told us what she needed us to do. We would all do what she asked us to do. She would have certain jobs for Amelia Foxwell, certain jobs for Nancy Genevieve, certain jobs for me, certain jobs for Shane, certain jobs for Ron Cross. But anyway, bottom line is this. We had a bunch of patriots decide they were going to go out there and plant information out there that, well, we were all informants. Number one, my brother Charles would tell anybody. I refused information at every turn that could possibly hurt my brother. The reason being is I know that sometimes, well, if you tell folks things, they slip out. And if they slipped out, I wanted my brother to know that he was secure with me in my position, standing with him, because, see, if I don't know it, I just can't tell him. And that's something that his mother always respected out of me as well. Look, folks, like in Waco, well, they're starting to use the word children to be able to do certain things within the court systems and to justify certain atrocities to the American people. Charles Dyer being of that same nature. Let me explain. Now, I've stood with Charles through his whole ordeal, them accusing him of raping his daughter. Now, I've never seen anything, to be objectively, I've never seen anything that clears Charles, but I've never seen anything that says he did that.
What about the testimony of the daughter? What did she say on court? How did that happen? You went to the court trial.
Unfortunately, the court removed all the people out of the court except for the jury and certain testifying witnesses when she testified, so I was not able to hear her testimony. However, I did see a video of her being interviewed by a certain lady that represented a certain group of people that didn't even have professional criteria, no certifications, no nothing, and I believe it's the Abbott House is the people that done this. You know, the trouble with that is this, Mr. Douglas, or this Abbott House group is funded by prosecutors across the United States, admittedly by the testimony of the lady that done the interview. She claimed that they never redirected children, that they liked them to just speak their mind. Well, that's not what I've seen in the video. I've seen a young lady or a little girl actually admit that her daddy didn't do nothing to her, but then was redirected by the interviewer themselves, by this lady that done the interview, back toward sex and her father. When the little girl went to talk about an instant, she had gotten a hold of one of her daddy's guns, and she played with one of her daddy's guns. Her daddy caught her, and, well, he punished her. Naturally so. And she seemed to be very, very upset about being punished about the gun. And when she wanted to talk about the gun in the video, well, here again, the person doing the interview redirects the child back towards sex. Now, she gives the child some sex dolls. The child shows 2 acts. Very basic acts. Bear in mind that the mother of this young lady, this little girl, actually had her hard drive seized from the sheriff's department. And guess what we see on the hard drive, people? Not only is there evidence, Valerie Dyer's hard drive, on how to set Charles up, but there's also pornographic pictures that just happened to pop into her computer mysteriously right before Charles was accused. And guess what? Out of them 400, close to 500 photos of pornography, what do we see? Well, the very sex acts the little girl describes in her interview to the Abbott House. Now, this lady admits in the video, right as the little girl wants to talk about the gun incident, and after she redirects back towards sex, takes a break, tells the little girl she'll be back, she admits she went back and talked to police. Then came back and started to redirect the little girl back into that subject again. So, that's a coerced video, by the way. The little girl mentions January 2nd twice. This child's 7 years old, folks. Now let's look at this logically. Now, those of us as parents know 7-year-olds. They don't name specific dates unless they are told to name specific dates. Those specific dates are planted in their mind. Now, that shows that the whole video concept itself was pretty much debunked, and that was used against Charles as evidence in court, circumstantial evidence, along with the daughter's testimony. The problem with the whole thing is, well, on day 1 of the trial, Charles' lawyer did a really good job. He chopped Valerie Dyer down on that stand, folks. Pretty bad. Should have been there to see it. I wish I could have videoed it so everybody could see exactly what happened in that courtroom. Well, on day 2, I guess the DA and the judge had a chance to talk about how day 1 went and didn't quite like the results. So the result on day 2 was everything that Charles' lawyer tried to get out. In his defense, the DA would object and the judge would sustain. Now, these transcripts are going to get out real soon, and I encourage everybody to look at them, because never in my life in a trial I've ever witnessed where a judge would sustain every objection the DA brought forward from day 2 to the end of the trial. The DA even objected on closing statements, folks. Closing statements were objected to. Now, from what I understand, that's kind of unheard of in a court of law. Oh, and the judge sustained it. So basically what happened, what I've seen in that courtroom, and I'm looking at it objectively, is two major issues here. Now, the court system can throw a man in prison for 30 years of having no evidence of this little girl's claim.
There was no DNA evidence. There was no
DNA evidence. Nothing. Now there was an examination by a doctor, and if you take the examination at face value, he does say that, well, her hymen was not visibly present. Now, did he examine her right? Another question we got to ask ourselves is, why did Valerie Dyer, when she noticed something was wrong with her daughter's sex organs, why did she not take her straight to the emergency room and have a rape test done on her daughter, which she did not do? Now, I can't think of a parent out there that would notice something was wrong with their daughter down there.
Yeah, somebody said here.
But grab her up and take her to the emergency room right away so a doctor, a professional doctor, could give her a rape examination and possibly collect DNA. That needs to be avoided.
Now, somebody said they had
relating back. Well, this relates back to the information we see that was looked up on the computer. Look, folks, it's getting to a point now to where if somebody accuses you something in a court of law, they haven't got to have no hard evidence against you. Basically, what the Charles Dyer trial was this. It was, let's see whose story the jury will believe, with no evidence other than a testimony claim and a video of a little girl. And then again, the defense is getting shut down by the DA and the judge. By the way, during a 3-day trial, out of all the objections given in that trial, which was probably around 35 to maybe 45 objections through that whole trial, maybe more, I'd like to see the transcripts, only 2 were overruled on the last day. And they were on subjects that really didn't give Charles an edge either way. So basically what I seen was a man get railroaded over a story with no evidence to back that story. None.
Now,
Charles Dyer done this. If he did this, he deserves everything he's getting. But if he didn't, well, they just sentenced an innocent man to 30 years in prison, folks.
Now,
Charles is going to do 30 years in prison with no evidence to support that claim. Now, I'm not saying something wasn't done to his daughter, but that courtroom failed to prove whether Charles did it or not.
Now, Charles is not necessarily an isolated case. We just had one here. He was an oath keeper, and he was a veteran, and he was talking. He was coming out. Pat Tillman wanted to come out and talk about us protecting the opium in Afghanistan, and he was shot. There was another veteran here in Albuquerque that the Oath Keepers marched on behalf of because he was shot by a SWAT team walking down the hallway to investigate his wife's report. There was a man with a gun outside.
That's correct. I've got some of Mr. Garina's t-shirts. We was out there trying to do everything we could to get justice for the Garina family. That was an atrocity. When a sheriff's SWAT team comes in and murders somebody as such, well, they need to be brought forward to charges for murder. That's
now, these SWAT teams are being set up and trained by the feds. The feds are arming them to the teeth. They're giving them tanks. They're giving them flamethrowers. They're giving them weapons, non-lethal weapons, that can heat up your skin from 100 yards away. It's what's happened.
And what we got to realize is this. There is a big surge in America right now for constitutional sheriffs, and many people are stepping to the plate in the name of that call and trying to either maintain a constitutional sheriff, if they've already got one, as myself. I'm proud of our sheriff over here, and our deputy, Sheriff Letzinger, is a wonderful man, constitutionally sound. Our deputies, he demands a certain standard out of our deputies concerning the civilian populace, especially on rights. Our sheriff is big on a person's rights. I'm really proud to know Sheriff Donnie Letzinger, and we're going to be kind of sad that this is his last term, and this is an election coming up here. The good news is what I'm learning about each sheriff candidate we have here, either way that goes, whichever one gets elected, is going to still serve a constitutional cause. Now, we need to get that going. Sheriff Richard Mack's out there just working his tail off, folks. And I'll tell you right now, I stand right beside Sheriff Richard Mack. And if we really want to make an impact in this country through our sheriff's department, which is our backyards, I want you all to think about how important it is to get your backyard cleaned up first. A lot of people want to go marching on Washington, and that's why I'm telling them, look at the results of the marches you see on Washington. It's been done too many times, folks. They're numb to it now. They just look out the window and they say, oh, look, there's another march on Washington today. That's basically the extent of it. Now, God bless everybody that goes to those marches and holds their signs up. We know their heart's in the right spot, but I want you to think about how important it is to get your local community centered off. Get those right people in there for your local community. Do what I've done. I've got my sheriff involved, the county commissioners, the county judge. They support a civilian militia here in the county. We're actually building that right now.
All right, let me just stop you right there. We've got about 3 minutes left on this segment of my YouTube tape, and my guest is Rick Light. Where his website is WRAM site, WRAMSITE.com. This is the Well-Regulated American Militia Sites. I've got links to that site up on my website on Free American and beneath Rick's name. People need to know, because and I'm going to do this. I'm going to lead into this, Rick. So kind of bear with me here, and then
Sure.
we'll crank this second half up, and we'll have 30 minutes to talk about it. Because I believe what you are doing and your approach to the militia is exactly right. When I started the militia, it was in New Mexico. It was with Governor Gary Johnson, who would make a great president, by the way. And when I got listed in Guide to Right-Wing Extremists, Gary Johnson recalled that booklet that the FBI put out with the Southern Poverty Law's help. He recalled that from every police office in New Mexico. And I had done a film on the first Homeland Security meeting, where you got Charles Brinkerhoff, Colonel Charles Brinkerhoff, lecturing for FEMA, lecturing law enforcement in Albuquerque, New Mexico, Sandia Labs. It's all in my tape, True Face of FEMA. And he made the statement, well, we're in for a long war. This war, and it's going. The enemy's weak, so the enemy doesn't have guns. It doesn't have tanks. Doesn't have airplanes. The enemy's weak. They'll use unconventional tactics. We have to use unconventional tactics. In the case of a single outbreak of smallpox in a major metropolitan area, a natural disaster of significant proportions, an atomic attack or something like that, we'll need 400.